Hello and welcome everybody. This is actually take two. I was going for like, I don't know, 2 minutes before I realized that I didn't actually hit the go live button. So let me bring you up to speed on my world. Happy Tuesday. I keep wanting to say Monday though. I keep wanting to say Monday because it was Memorial Day celebrated in the United States yesterday, so we all had the day off, and it throws the week off for me. But you let me know. Is today feeling like Tuesday for you, or are we all on this in the same boat together where it's just like it's off? I don't know. In any case, I'm filling in for the amazing and the fantastic Eric Hanchett. He's going to be on a plane during this time. I'm sort of taking over, and I've commandeered this ship so that we can come together and talk about AWS Amplify, full stack applications, and in particular, I know, at least myself, I get a little tired of working with like generative AI. Like, here's a way to show a picture, here's a way to show some chat stuff. I'm going to take it a step further, and I want to use a knowledge base. So I'm going to have a sort of my own custom data that I can now chat and interact with. So that way, it's just a little bit more personal. It's a little bit more fun. But enough about that. How's everybody doing today? Where are we from? Oh, by the way, I have a new friend here. So I got the Ray-Ban glasses not too long ago, and I wanted to do like you see me, I see you type deal. So catch me after the stream. I'm going to edit this and sort of put these videos together just to see what it looks like. But I've been loving these for additional content creation modes. So, I mean, let me know if you have a pair, what's your experience like? And if you don't have one, what have you heard? What do you like about it? We'll see. Let's go ahead and jump into, I guess, not really anything too crazy, but I do want to share my screen. So that way I can show you sort of the architecture of at least what we're trying to accomplish today. So we're going to come over to the screen, share that. And let's see here. This is the application that we're going to be running. But we're going to come over here and go full screen and try to show you what's going on. Adam, thanks for joining us today. Yeah, it's going to be cool with the glasses. So I'm learning that, you know, if I click it, I can take a picture of you, not you personally, but all of you. And then if I record, now it records for a full minute. I guess that's the longest that it can record for. So I'm loving it. I mean, I've been taking my dogs on like their normal walks, but then recording along the way. It's been pretty cool. In any case, though, thanks for joining us, by the way. In any case, let's walk through what we have today, or at least what I came up with. So for those of you that don't know, Bedrock has the ability to create a knowledge base. Now, what is a knowledge base, right? So oftentimes when you chat with these generative AI models, you have the ability to say things like, you know, how are you feeling today? Yada, yada, yada. We've all done it, right? Give me some general tips. But in a lot of use cases, especially for enterprise data or just proprietary data, you want it to have some additional context on what your typical needs are or what your documents are. Now, there are two ways to get this set up. The first one is sort of the tried and true traditional way. You have to set up a vector database, which is, I don't like this layout actually. There we go. A vector database is a way to store the embeddings of the text. So take the text, it needs to be in a way that sort of your typical database can understand and parse quickly. That's what a vector database is for. And it uses embeddings to look that up. So do that, and then now we can retrieve it. The downside to doing that is that you have a vector database, which incurs an additional cost, right? And then every time you have new data, say I have a sort of local list of businesses in my specific area, then every time a new business comes up, then we have to resync and re-ingest that data into our application. It's more architectural flow. Not saying it can't be done, but you have to do it yourself, which is kind of a pain. The second option is recently announced where the Bedrock team has said, you know what? a lot of people want the ability to do this. Let's just make it super easy for them. Instead of having to set up all that vector database stuff, which you absolutely can do, instead, we'll just give you an endpoint that you can hit up. We'll point you, and you tell us where the data is in your S3 bucket, and we'll just sort of do this all on the fly. Now, you can still have context and chat with it by providing a session ID, which is super, super cool. But that's the workflow that we're going to be using today. Now, we do have a question, what tool is being used for this data flow architecture? Excalidraw. Excalidraw is amazing. For those of you that aren't familiar, it's free to use. I have the paid plan because I can have different workflows and things like that. But Excalidraw is what I love. And then you can use like the library feature, and that's what I use to bring in my architecture diagrams. But yeah, thanks for joining us today, Kamal. And then will we do, verify permissions? There's an admin, and then there's normal users. It's not verified permissions that I'm using. It's all done through Cognito. But let me explain this architecture, and then that'll give you like some more insight into what we're talking about. Love the questions, by the way. Where are we at? It's 11:09 a.m. my time. What time is it all for you? Is it early? I'm on my second cup of coffee. As you're typing that, let's go through this. We're going to be dealing with 2 pages here, okay? The first one is going to be for your everyday users. Right? Folks can come in, it's a typical chat app at that point, right? They can chat with the application and they can get follow-up questions. Now, I did mention that we have context. So if you refresh the page, that context is gone. But if you say things like, hey, what is a song by Bruno Mars? Say we have a song inventory list that we have. And it's like, oh yeah, here's a song by Bruno Mars. And you're like, cool. Does he, right, context, does he have any more songs? And then it would know what you're referencing by saying he. Typical stuff like that we come to expect. Turns out it's not that difficult. And in fact, the flow of our application is going to be any number of users can come and hit up our Next.js application built in React. This is going to use the AWS Amplified JavaScript libraries to take that text prompt and go directly to our Bedrock model. Now you see these 2 steps in between here. This one is going to be our API, right? If you use API Gateway, cool. This is just another API that you can use. The benefit is that AppSync is based off of GraphQL, which may or may not be your flavor. Doesn't really matter these days, and you'll see why in a little bit. And then, but the biggest benefit is that you can have this direct integration. This looks like a Lambda function, as we'll see in the code, but it's actually just AppSync making a direct call to our Bedrock model. Super, super cool. And you don't have to set up another AWS service to get this working. It just comes out of the box. Now, this is just the text prompt, but as I mentioned, Bedrock has to know where your data lives. And for that case, we have to tell it, hey, all of my data is living inside of this S3 bucket. Now, there's a second flow here. And the second flow is going to be for an admin, someone that is in charge of managing this data. And as I'm saying data, you can essentially think of a CSV file, just because that's what we're going to be working with today. So we have an admin, yours truly. I'm also going to go to the same site, but I'm going to go to a different endpoint. We call it manage data, but you could think of it as like an auth portal, right? So we have this. I have to sign in and do all that stuff. And that gives me the ability, the permissions to add data to this S3 bucket. Now, the cool thing is that if you add data with the same name, you overwrite it. So as long as I add this file to my S3 bucket in the same path and with the same name, I can constantly update what is being asked for by our end users. And then the cool thing down here is that it, when used in conjunction with the AWS Amplify libraries, they just make it really easy to do all of this. So when it comes to adding the components and certain styling, they give you that out of the box. I'm using a mix of Amplify and Tailwind for those curious. But let's go ahead and maybe look at the actual solution. And then from there, we can take it a step further and dive into the code. So here we go. Now we need to bump this up for folks in the audience. So what do we have here? We have an application similar to what we have in Excalibur. Oh my God, is that my brother in the chat? Will, my guy, what is up? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing better now. And I miss you, man. I miss you. It's been too long. So let's talk about what we're doing here, okay? Actually, Will, I'm going to make you part of the story here. So we have services that are going on in our application, right? Now, here's the thing. These are going to be folks in my neighborhood. Now, my dream is for Will to live near me. So we're going to have to add him as soon as I get done with this flow. But I can ask it things like, hey, I'm looking for someone to cut my grass, right? Who is available? Now, if I do that, hit enter, this is going to make that direct call to, you see how fast that is, but it's going to make a direct call via AppSync to Bedrock using that JavaScript resolver, right? And it's like, yeah, based off of the search results, we'll see what that looks like. Michael Liendo offers grass cutting services, and here's my phone number, right? Now, let's take a peek and see what this looks like. So I'm going to bring over a CSV file so that we can all see it here. Can I zoom in? There we go. So we have this CSV file, right? And these are the services, the phone numbers and the contact information via email of what they have. Now, Will is in the crowd, right? So we need to get him in because he just moved by me. Not really, but I wish he did. Right, and we have Will. And Will offers some couple of things that I've noticed from Will, right? Dance moves is what he offers. He also offers, I know he can cook and he can do Spanish as well. So we're going to say, Spanish lessons. And we'll say gourmet cooking. Okay. So we have this. Will, what's your phone number? I just want to dox you real quick. JK. So we'll do, 444-5555, right? And then now we have will@gmail.com. Okay. So if I save this, this is numbers in Apple stuff. So I need to export it as a CSV. So I'm going to go over here, file, export to CSV, and click save. I think it's going to go to my desktop, and I'm calling it set list. Cool. It should replace it. There we go. Awesome. So we have this, right? Now, all my application cares about is that it has the ability to sort of upload this set list file to my S3 bucket. That's all it cares about. And in fact, if I ask it now, like, what does Will offer? Right? It should be like, hey, I don't know, I can't help you, something like that, right? So it's looking at that file, and yeah, we get an empty message here, right? And if we try again, so that's just like weak ass error handling on my part. But how about we do anyone named Will exist, right? And we're trying, and the cool thing about this is it gave me no results the first time, right? I can make that better in my code. But then the second time I was like, hey, give me an actual answer of if anyone named Will exists, and it can't. It's like, sorry, I can't do it. And that's the beauty of having it trained on your own data set, right? The fact that it will not hallucinate. Now, it's still AI and it's still made by humans, so it can be error prone. But the fact is with Amazon Bedrock, it's going to give you the sources, which I'm just choosing not to display, but it's going to give you the sources of where it found this data. Super, super cool stuff, right? Because the worst thing is, like, I would hate for it to be like, oh yeah, Will is this, unicorn that lives down the street from you. It's like, he is pretty cool, but it just doesn't work that way. So we just added him to this CSV, right? And my guy, Aaron, oh my God, all my buddies are in the stream today. Yeah, this is great. Actually, I gotta record this now. I got the Ray-Bans on, guys. But yeah, Aaron's in the chat. You know, he's talking about the world operates using CSV. Facts, big facts, right? Got my friend Will up in the chat. Appreciate being added to the stream, getting his hobbies in the mix, looking good. So we have this up and running now. This is how I clip stuff for the stream now. So let's switch this here. Let's go to manage data, right? I'm already signed in. So to give you the flow here, if I sign out and come up here, right? This is my Gmail account. Social security number for the password. Oh, cheese and rice. What do we have here? Boom. I had to like say it in my head. Oh, this isn't working. What do we have? What do we have? Why would I sign out when it was already working just to prove a point? That is not working. Okay, well, you're going to see the whole flow today, folks, because we're going to create this account because I apparently can't remember the same password that I use for everything. Got it. Create an account is going to shoot me an email. Again, this is AWS Amplify. It gives me all this stuff out of the box. Will, don't come at me for using the email. I know you're passwordless and you do all that stuff. Shout out to Auth0. But this is just what we're doing today, my guy. It's just what we're doing today. Okay, I'm waiting for right. It would like avoid this entire situation that I just found myself into. And now I can't seem to get that new password to come through. 1 second here. Got it. Got it. It's like, oh, the streaming gods help me out today. Oh, I used the wrong email. Can I try this again? Can I sign in? Come here. Was it my Focus Otter one? Whoops, sign in. There we go. This is the problem with having alt personas. And then now it's not going to show through because I already was like, hey, resend it. Well, then let's do forgot password. Will, I'm trying to get your hobbies displayed here, my guy. All right, let's send the code. There we go. So any second now, I'm looking at my email right now. There we go. I got the code. Boom. I hope it's not like old password cannot be new password. Okay, cool. That worked. Got it. And now sign in. So now we're brought into this application. That was a long way to back up to punt that ball. And I put it like a little heads up in here for me, right? Like the file needs to be called setlist. Otherwise it's not going to work. Now this is currently trained on that old data. We have to fix that. Here is the new data. We're going to open it. Boom, uploaded. It's just a straight call to AWS S3. Super fast. But the cool thing is that if I come up in here and I say, you know, I'm looking, let me get rid of, sorry, Will, I got to get rid of this and put me on the side so you all can see it. Yeah, that's the wrong one. Let's go here. There we go. I'm looking for a Spanish tutor, right? We're not going to say that we need Spanish lessons. All we're saying is like, we just need a Spanish tutor. And we're going to see if this pulls up. There we go. Now, here's the cool thing. Like, based on the search results, Will Johnson offers Spanish lessons as one of his services. That's cool, but I need more information, right? So now we get into context. I'm interested. How do I get a hold of him? I'm not even going to say phone number, right? So I'm going to hit enter. And then this should be, there we go. And notice that because I didn't specify how to get a hold of him, right? It's like, here's his phone number, or you can email him. I get both of those pieces of information. And it's super nice. Like, this is the easiest way I found to create a knowledge base. This can be, in our case, a CSV file, But note that it doesn't have to be. It could be a PDF document. It could be Word. It could be text. Folks ask me, can this be JSON? It can, kinda. It doesn't accept like a .json extension, but JSON at the end of the day is just text, and it can parse that just as well. Super cool stuff in here. Well, thanks for taking part in the experiment. Thanks for being part of the exercise today. Good times all around. But yeah, let's go ahead and sort of dive into the code. But along the way, if any of you have questions, like if you want to see the architecture, if you want to see something broken down differently, cool. Like just let me know. But I'm going to teach you, at least show you, how I went about creating this project, because it was like here's an idea. Let me just show you what it's like from scratch. Like that's just how my mind works, right? So first and foremost, I went over to V0, right? Love these folks. And I was just like, I need a chat app. And I could even specify this, like, make it a simple chat app. Cool. I had to authenticate, come up here. I think it's just GitHub these days. Awesome. And then now I have my simple chat app that I can create. If you haven't used this before, highly recommend. In fact, this is going to be super similar to what we already have, but it creates the UI for you as React components that you can then use their command to bring into your application. And before you do that, you can style it. Now, the downside to this is that there isn't a data management aspect, right? So you have to do all the handlers and things like that. And as of today, actually as of forever, it is all client based, meaning those handlers that you have to write, you have to like configure the code to get it work with server actions. Keep in mind, this is all Vercel/Next.js stuff. But this is what I did to create the UI. Okay, nothing too crazy. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. Next up, I went over to my code after I brought it in. We're going to bump this up for you lovely folks. And there we go. And I was like, you know what? This cool new service called Amplified Gen 2 came out, and it's supposed to offer this TypeScript way of creating these AWS services. Now, I mentioned this uses AppSync under the hood. Right? Now, in the past, you had to create a GraphQL schema to take advantage of this. But in fact, these days, you don't have to. For example, here's the operation that we're using to make that call from sort of AppSync taking our prompt, the text, and handing that over to Bedrock. The cool thing is that I specify, yeah, it's a mutation. From here, I say, and I'm just like chaining things, right? So dot mutation, dot arguments, it's a text, and I take the session ID. This is why I can have contextual back and forth with Bedrock without having to need a database. There's no database in this application. And then, what are we referring to? Or rather, what are you going to return? It's a Bedrock response. We'll get to this down here. And then how are you going to be authenticated? This is cool because AppSync has a couple of ways that you can have authorization and authentication on your API. In our case, we're using a public API key. Now, this is meant to be public. This isn't one of those like keeping secrets manager or store away and don't let anybody see it API key. This is sent along with every request just so that you can specify how long you want it to be valid for. In our case, 14 days. With me so far? The other part is that we have Amazon Cognito set up, as you saw, with my email and password authentication. This is for the backend. This is for managing the file in S3. Super cool. All I have to do is say allow authenticated. Basically, if you can sign in, then you can use this API. Nothing too crazy from it. And then sort of what is the business logic that you are going to create? Sort of here's your API, here's are your authenticating people, but what are you actually trying to do? Well, all of that stuff is going to be a custom handler, and its sort of guts, its business logic is going to be called retrieve and generate.js. We'll take a look at this in just a moment. But the last part of this puzzle is just the response. It's an object. I'm going to pass back text, which is a required string. It has to be there. It can't be null. And then the session ID, which is also a string and required. So let's take a look at this retrieve and generate.js file. And let's go. There we go. Okay. I'm going to sort of minimize this for you because we have two pieces here. We have at its core a request and a response. Now, the way to break this up, in case this is totally new to you, AppSync is going directly to another AWS service. There isn't a Lambda function or another API call in the mix. So what's happening here? The request is AppSync going to, in our case, Bedrock, right? The response is the response that Bedrock then sends to us. That's why we have two distinct blocks here. So when we get into this, we have retrieve and generate as sort of the endpoint. And I'll show you in a little bit why it's specifically retrieve and generate. And it's just an HTTP call. This is something you could do in fetch. This is something you could do from like the command line, right? It doesn't have to be overly complicated. And the cool thing is that it's all documented. Again, we'll come back to where we get that in just a second. In this command, similar to fetch, here's our method, here are the headers, and here's the body. This body is pretty much what's doing the entire magic here. Right? The input that it accepts is going to be just a single text. It's going to be the arguments that were passed in from the front end, context.args.text. And then we have a specific retrieve and generate config. Now, this can look daunting. It's like, how the heck did I know? Or rather, why is this object structured the way that it is? And to show you, or to sort of explain what is happening here, we have this external sources config, right? We're giving it the ARN, basically the reference number to the actual model that we're trying to use. In this case, it's Claude, right? My good friend Claude is in the mix here. V3 Sonnet. And then, where is this foundational model supposed to be looking at in your application? And we're saying it's looking for an S3 bucket. Specifically, here is the bucket URI, the bucket endpoint. And then we mark it as external services and also pass it a session ID, if there is one, a little nullish coalescing going on here. That's the request going to Bedrock, right? And Bedrock is in charge of handling everything from there. It's going to give us a response right here in the body. I just parse it and send that back to the front end. That's all I'm doing. Now, the big question is, how the heck did I know what this retrieve and generate configuration is? I didn't know. So I had to look inside of the documentation. Now, I knew I was messing with a knowledge base. So let's just sort of look it up here as if we were doing this in real life. So we'll say AWS Bedrock, and I'm going to say retrieve and generate. It's going to take me to this doc. And oh, would you look at that, right? We have, if I sort of make some room for us, it's a post request. Retrieve and generate. It gives me the content type, and it has everything that I need inside of here. It has the input. Here's the retrieve and generate config. And if you click on these, the really cool thing about these docs is that if you click on them, it'll let you know if they're required. So I just went through here, pointed at the things that I felt like made sense. I don't have guardrails or inference, but I knew that I had a model that I had to work with. And I knew that I had an S3 bucket that I had to work with, right? And all this other stuff I didn't bother with, except for the session ID at the very end. A little bit of trial and error, because I'll admit, like the first, 3 times, I was forgetting something, or rather I was leaving something out that was required, or I was putting additional stuff in there. That part wasn't all that great, I'll be honest. It took like 3 tries. And then I got it right, and it was great. The world was fine. Pretty cool stuff. Now, that's sort of the end user experience, right? That's what the user's seeing but there's also the signed in user portion of things, the authenticated experience. What is that like? Really, it's just an S3 bucket. There's no API call to be made. So in fact, if I go over to this part, this is all, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code to say, give me an S3 bucket, name it skill set bucket, and who has access to it? Well, it's going to be any authenticated person can read and write to it, but only specifically the path, which is skill set / and then any object in that bucket, right? Crazy to me how easy this is. Like an S3 bucket is one of the hardest services that I've had to use. But when it comes to creating one in a React application with Amplified Gen 2, I love it. It's 5 lines of code and I get all this functionality out of the box. So again, to go down in here, somebody give me some hobbies. Just type in the chat real quick, some hobbies, and we'll sort of run through this flow one more time so that we can kind of see how this works end to end. You saw how the UI was created. That was with Vercel. You saw sort of how the API was created. That was with Amplified Gen 2. And then, and then you got to see how the S3 bucket was created. What do we have here? We have some folks chiming in. Let's get in here. You have some hobbies. Oh, I think you're trying to trick it. So who do we have here? We have Truly. I'm gonna put it like this: Truly Oxford. Bird. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I type. There we go. Fork. I'm getting ready to. There. All right. What do we have? Fishing, running, and archery. Right. Fake phone number. We're gonna do all ones because you're the winner of the day. 1. And then for the email, let's just say not available. I'm kind of curious. So this is like a real thing, right? If you don't have sanitization on your UI, I guess it really wouldn't matter because this is like the admin inputting this, but maybe the admin doesn't realize how the application is supposed to work. And they just put not available instead of leaving it blank. What will get interpreted if I say, give me the email address? Next up, let's see here. We have Aaron. Aaron, he has some hobbies. Smartass. There we go. And then, we're going to do 9s. 9's the biggest number that we can have. That's because Aaron is like 6'11". And then inside of here, for the email, what are we saying, right? Admin at Amazon.com, making the big bucks. So we are going to save this up and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come over here. We're going to export to a CSV to the desktop, which is going to replace the current version that is there. And then back in my application, where are we at here? I can just upload it. So we're going to go to manage the data. And from here, we'll browse for that file. There it is. And if you're wondering, what was the inspiration for this application, right? I live in a suburban neighborhood and we have a local Facebook page that everyone chimes in on. And they're always saying stuff that I swear it's already been said probably 20 other times. But they're like, hey, does anybody know of someone that, yada, yada, yada? Or does anyone have a babysitter for, this time? And I was like, there has to be a better way because you can't search that thing easily on Facebook. You don't want to be that person that is like, man, can't you just do your own research? Okay. So here we go. My guy is looking for someone, so the hobby, to fish with him. Who is available? Right? So who has hobbies on here? Well, based off of the information, Truly Oxford offers fishing as one of your services. So now you get to charge for being someone's friend. which is a win-win, honestly. But yeah, they'll be they'll be able to go fishing. And then here's the tricky one, right? What about someone with, and then I'm gonna like some with some. I don't even know, Aaron. How do I do this? What about someone with? I'm gonna say some hobbies. What's it gonna do here? Oh, you guys can't see it. My bad. I'm covering it up. Call me out on that stuff. Wrong one. Wrong one. There we go. Right. What do we have? Someone with some hobbies. You have some. See, their other listed hobbies are running in archery, which is great. But yeah, you're right. The chat is like, hey, let's do like in quotes. I meant some hobbies as the hobbies. Right, now what are you going to do? The anticipation is killing me. What's truly Oxford? You know what? Stop getting away from the fishing buddy. I have a fishing buddy. Here we go. What does Aaron offer? Let's just now we're getting passive aggressive with it. It's Aaron, what are we doing here? Some hobbies. Okay, so your hobbies are being interpreted as like generic fillers, which is actually let's see here. Actually, I'm thinking who did I put as the email? Truly Oxford, was that you that had the email? Of like nothing listed. What is the email of Oxford? Okay, so is it going to say your email is not available? Boom. Okay, we're good. We're good. Couldn't find an email for this guy. So it knows that not available is like NA blank, all that other stuff. So it's smart, right? Now, unless you have a troll in your email list that is like, my hobbies are some hobbies, then it's, you can fool it, right? You can fool it. But that's cool. I'm fine with that. And in this application for my neighborhood, because I did build this and provide it for my neighborhood, the reason why I didn't have them log in and type in their own hobbies is because you're dealing with people, right? And people are going to say like, my hobby is explicit topic that I can't say on company Twitch, right? And then you go and you're like, hey, who can babysit? And then now you get like all of this other stuff. There's a human factor to it, is what I'm trying to say. And so for that reason, I say fill out your hobbies. And then like at most, that email will just come to me as so-and-so just updated their hobby list. And then I will manually put that into the Excel sheet. So that way I can screen it. Now, I guess to that point, could I have AI look at their submission and say, like, sanitize this out so that way nothing offensive or explicit is in there? Sure, I could. But I mean, then work starts to feel like work, right? And this is fun. So I don't mind inputting or sanitizing the emails on my own. But yeah, this is the application. Any questions on this? I mean, at the end of the day, if we look over the architecture, maybe it'll make a little bit more sense now. These are the services that we're rocking with. So make some room. AWS Amplify libraries, that's just used to create these AWS services. That's just my tool. That's my SST. That's my CDK. That's my AMPed. This is just being used to, like, I guess hosting also, but interact with my backend services. Cognito for auth, super, super simple. It's just email, which I think is, I don't know, 3 lines of code. If I look back at that real quick, let's go to auth. Yeah, we're looking at, 3 core lines of code right here, right? This is going to create Cognito with user login via email. Nothing too crazy. From here, we have AppSync. You saw how easy it was to create that, and that's the bulk of our application. Right? And then we have our storage bucket, which is going to contain the files. 3 core AWS services. Our API interacts with our foundation model, Sonnet, via a JavaScript resolver. I use V0 to create a super simple chat interface. And then I have 2 types of users, folks that have the API key, and then folks that are admin that can actually manipulate the contents in this S3 bucket. That's it. I mean, it took me, I don't know how long, half a day to put this together. And then I have something in production that was great. Now, if you want to do this, if you want to take advantage of this application, because it's beautiful, right? The UI is styled great. It's ready for prime time. Let me see if I have the repo up for you all. Simple knowledge base. Is it you? Yes. Okay, so for those of you that are new to my repos, they come in 2 fashions. One is this empty Liendo sort of profile that you see right here. This is where I put all of my applications that I haven't spent the time like cleaning up console.logs. I probably don't have a README for it. Right. No README. Sorry, you got to check out the whole stream to know what's going on. And sometimes like I'm still working on them. Totally fine. But oftentimes, if you go to my, I guess let me save this URL to give to you all. The way that I make the distinction is that I go to my focus author org here. And inside of here, these are all the repositories that like I'm done with. I made the repo. It's out here. I just forked it from my empty Liendo one, and it's good to go. Oh, Aaron's coming in clutch with the link there. I appreciate it. But yeah, that's all there is to it. So that way you can have it, test it out. And if you haven't messed with Amplified Gen 2 before, then, I mean, now you have an excuse to do so, right? Pretty cool stuff. And the best part is that it deploys all this stuff in a sandbox environment. So I come up in here, I deploy it, and oh, you're still get away. Okay, now you're not a highlighted comment. So I have this area right over here. And then if I get out of it, it's like, hey, because you're in a sandbox, do you just want to like YOLO away your entire backend application because it's just meant for a sandbox environment? If I say yes, it's going to do a cleanup. It's going to get rid of all of my backend resources. And if I use Amplify hosting to bring in this repo, then we're good. Like it'll just work. I don't know. It'll recreate the backend resources. I just say it because it's so easy these days. I remember back in the day, I was writing like shell scripts and everything to do all this stuff. And then now all of you spoiled Gen Zers get this for free. So it's get off my lawn, but it's great. It's great. I'm going to say no because I'm still demoing this out. But yeah, that's it. I mean, technically, I got all of you lovely folks for another 14 minutes. But I don't know what to talk about because I really didn't expect it to be that easy. But what I can say is I do have another session coming up with the Believe in Serverless folks, which is going to be great. It's at 1 o'clock PST. PST? CT, 1 o'clock my time. I'm in the Midwest. And check out the Believe in Serverless Discord if you want to get some insights on that. But it's coming up soon in like an hour. Yeah, with that though, any questions? Like, let me just pause because I've been talking nonstop this entire time. Let me take a sip, slow things down. I didn't realize I'm still wearing my Ray-Bans, even though I haven't been coding. Okay. Or haven't been recording. Okay, what do we got? First and foremost, let's get the cool folks a shout out, right? Aaron, I appreciate you being in the chat today. My guy, as always. I'll see you at reInvent this year, hopefully, right? Fingers crossed. Believeinserverless.com. Hit it up. A lot of good folks, smart folks are there. I don't know what I'm doing there, but a lot of smart folks are there, and you could learn a lot. We also have a Ninja Turtles Pizza Quest Part 2. That's right. I was on stream. What was it, Friday? And I was just having a good time showing folks how to work with AppSync, do all of that stuff, build it out full stack applications. You know what I do. And just having a blast with my buddy Andres. And then Shirley Oxford. What do we have here? I must admit, I don't know a lot of how to set these up, but as a college software dev, I thought it was really neat and at least understood some of the basics of my code. I'm so glad you gave me that insight and that perspective as a college kid, because I'm trying to get folks to understand. Actually, it's two reasons why. I'm trying to understand, like, where's that gap? How can we get college kids onboarded to the cloud that much easier? And then two, like, if you're taking, I'm assuming that you're taking, technical classes or programming classes in college, what are they teaching you? Like, is it server stuff, or is it like, I'm assuming you don't talk about serverless stuff, or maybe you do. I don't know. It's been, what has it been now? 13 years since I dropped out of college. So you give me some insight on what you all are discussing there. And then Heartstein, you know what? Nodding and agreeing is okay. I appreciate it. And sometimes I just need that validation. So, nod and agree all day. Aaron, what do we have here? In a few weeks, Reinforce is coming up. I forgot about Reinforce. That's the security one in Vegas. And then New York Summit, I will see you there. I'm not speaking, so I get to just crash the party. But yeah, New York Summit, let's grab some drinks on you, and we'll have a good time. And of course, reInvent is going to be amazing, as it is every year. Oh man. So yeah, good times. It is security, but it's in Philly. I didn't realize that. I didn't know it switched. Let's see here. Okay, so here's the answer to the question I just asked about, like, what are college kids doing in college these days? So they don't teach server stuff. They teach you the syntax of a coding language. Oh, I remember that, right? I guess, like, the general idea is that if you know the syntax, then it's easy for you to be a polyglot and switch to, like, Java to C++, because you get the underlying semantics of a coding language. So what are you dabbling in? You're in Python? So they teach you how to write the syntax for Python, but don't attach APIs or anything further like that. That is probably my biggest gripe, is that they don't teach APIs, because to me, that's where the fun is, right? Learning how to make a syntax-based application is fine from a learning perspective, but in practicality, like, you start with weather, and then you start with, I don't know, like Giphy API. And from there, you just keep branching out. So I respect you that you're doing that. I don't mean to, like, say, like, don't do it. I wish that there was a maybe modernized approach or a way to get students engaged from an API perspective, because that to me is where the core is. That retrieve and generate endpoint, that's just an API within AWS. But who knows? I'm assuming you're at Oxford. But yeah. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Beta Wolfies, in college they focus on the core stuff. Yeah, for those of you that haven't streamed with me before, again, thanks for joining. But also, I went to college for track and field. In all honesty, like, my freshman year, had a great time, broke a couple records, and then I was like, I don't need to go to class. I just want to have fun. Like, I'm here for a short time, right? I'm here for a good time, not a long time type deal. And turns out that track and field isn't something that you can major in. So I did not have a second year in college, and that was fine. Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, and that was perfectly fine. The core idea, though, was that I became a self-taught developer shortly after failing out of college, and I just picked up a book and taught myself how to do all this stuff. So I come from a very practical background. So I apologize if I seem like jaded on college education. I love it. I always say like being a self-taught developer is fine. I would never want like a self-taught doctor operating on me, right? Like there's like legitimate reasons why you should stay in college. But when it comes to programming, I'd say it's an either or. I respect the path that you're going on. And if I can help you out along your journey, truly Oxford, hit me up. Anybody can catch me up on any of the socials at Focus Otter, and it'll be a good time. Always happy to help. Yeah, Aaron, thanks for helping him out in the chat also. Okay, folks, unless you all have questions, I mean, we can wrap this thing up. What are we looking at? A couple minutes early. It's always a blast. I won't be here next week at this time. I'm just filling in for Eric. But if you want to see more of me, all you got to do is let him know. And I'll be back. I'm like Beetlejuice. Say my name 3 times. And I'm here. Or Candyman. That got dark. Okay, folks. But yeah, thanks for joining me. It was a blast. I'll catch you all next time. Believe in serverless, folks. I will see you in an hour. And let's just rock with it. Let's have a good one. Peace.